We must protect the dollar.
Is the United States dollar under threat?
I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think I will use the word doomed in the long term.
Russia thinks that BRICS should do more, so it has floated the idea of a common currency.
2009 organization named BRIC was formed, and then on 1st January 2004, 6 countries have joined. 14 countries have formally applied, while more than 15 countries have shown interest to join, and is thinking of launching a currency to rival the US dollar that will be pegged to. It's concerning for the world. Foreign ministers of China, India, Brazil and Russia began meeting informally in 2006, which led to making BRIC in 2009. South Africa officially became a member nation on 24 December 2010 and BRICS came into place. So BRICS is unfortunately not BRICS, but is an acronym of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The BRICS were originally made for highlighting investment opportunities and for political purposes, but now they have formed into a real geopolitical bloc and has been considered the geopolitical rival to G7, like making things that challenge G7 things, like the new development bank and the CRA. Some are saying they're making a new global order. The group has summits every year. At the 2014 summit, they created 2 important things, the NDB and the CRA. First, the NDB, New Development Bank, is a BRICS development bank that has been used for funds for infrastructure and clean energy projects so far. It's an organization, a lot like the IMF, which makes investments into developing economies to grow their economic output, so they can hopefully, long-term, make them value-adding participants in global trade. One key difference being that the BRICS Bank is a lot more limited in membership than the IMF. While the IMF has everyone, almost everyone, the BRICS Bank has at least for now barely 10 members. Secondly, the CRA. It has a capital of $100 billion for now, which has been divided among them like real friends. If one of them has trouble paying their bills or have currency issues, they can borrow money from the CRA to get back on track, like the IMF, but with less additions. Cooperation among members is achieved through 3 levels. Level 1, the most obvious, government to government engagement, meaning handshakes, a lot of handshakes between leaders after discussion and negotiation. Level 2, organization to organization engagement, that is government affiliated. At level 3, normal people to people engagement. BRICS has one of the fastest growing economies like India and China. BRICS before 2024 controlled 27% of world land area and about 42% of world population and 27% of GDP, which is lower than G7. However, BRICS is growing faster and nonetheless has 32% of GDP PPP, which is higher than G7. At the 15th BRICS Summit, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had been invited to join the organization. And then on 1st January 2024, everyone except Argentina joined. 14 countries have formally applied to join BRICS, some of which are Bangladesh, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Venezuela, Vietnam, and Palestine. Adding to the fuel, it was announced that 20 countries had expressed interest in joining BRICS, which include Mexico, Turkey, the DRC, and 17 more. These countries are very resource-rich. Forgetting everyone, just considering Saudi Arabia and Iran and Venezuela combined, they would control 43.9% of world proven oil reserves. If you also include original BRICS member reserves, then BRICS Plus would control more than 50% of world oil reserves. That's not including other oil-rich countries like UAE and Kazakhstan. If they join, I bet some countries will focus more on climate change and focus on renewable energy. In renewable energy, there are some important alloys needed, some of which are cobalt, lithium, and rare earth minerals. They have that too. Only including China, India, and Bolivia, it would bring around 30 million tons, which is 1/3 of lithium proven reserves. In cobalt, if they get DRC, they will get half of all proven reserves of cobalt. And only including China, they will have 1/3 of all proven rare earth minerals. So if they get DRC, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Bolivia, and Venezuela, then BRICS Plus, I call it, would have about half of world population and oil reserves and cobalt reserves and 1/3 of lithium and rare earth minerals. And if the organization has cooperation between them, they will be energy independent and will have food security as well, as India, China, Brazil and Argentina are big food producers. And if they have military cooperation as well, Saudis will have an alternate security partner, as original BRICS countries do 20% of all the military exports. But this is pure speculation. Nonetheless, the BRICS have discussed plans to build out their own undersea optical fiber cables to link all the member countries directly. This isn't a big deal for Russia, China, India, South Africa. However, it's a bit of a challenge for a country on the other side of the world, which is Brazil. They have even pushed for the BRICS game, which are kind of like the Olympics, but only for BRICS countries. The general trend of this organization is clear. They want their own IMF, their own cable, their own Olympics, and their own reserve currency. On February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and the West sanctioned Russia. The Russian-Ukrainian war has reminded the whole world of one important thing. The US dollar is not just reserve currency, but also a weapon, and a weapon that is far greater than a nuke and can cripple economies without firing a single weapon. The US imposed various sanctions and removed Russia from SWIFT, which is an international money transfer system, quite swiftly, and froze their $300 billion of reserves. This aside, because of this power, the US has also crippled economies of Iran, discount Korea, and oily Venezuela. And this weaponization is making countries vary from the US dollar. And here comes BRICS, and they propose to launch a currency that might be the new reserve. But what makes a reserve currency? To make a currency successful, 6 things are important. Acceptance, like currency, can be used and can be accepted globally for financial transactions across countries. Second, accessibility and utility, like the ease of using the currency for international transactions and seamless exchange and trade. Stability, like value doesn't fluctuate and remain relatively constant over time. Scarcity, while not exactly scarce, the currency should neither be printed excessively nor kept rare as well. A controlled supply is essential. Trust, like confidence in the issuing government's economic stability and political system, is crucial. Investors and central banks need to believe that the currency value will be protected and not manipulated. Expansion, like more countries using it and more countries joining BRICS. Economists refer to the US dollar as the global reserve currency, but there are no formal agreements or official rules to say that the US dollar should be the world reserve. Countries do use other currencies for trade all the time, so why the US dollar is the reserve? It's just that most countries use the US dollar the most because it's the easiest to work with and is one of the most stable, trusted, and has a controlled supply and is widely accepted, so can be used almost everywhere. But wait a minute, someone has tried something like a collective currency. Oh, this is the euro, official currency of member state asterisk of the EU, and it took 10 years to fully set up. It was first non-physical and then physical coins and notes were brought in 1st January 2002. In 1980, the US dollar was dominated in reserve with 84%, and now it has slid back to 58%, and euro has become the second world reserve currency and has 20% of world reserve. Quite impressive, however, it didn't overthrow the dollar as some had thought. We understood that euro, a multinational currency, took 10 years to fully set up, whereas BRICS currency will be a multi-continental currency and many times more difficult to set up. But Russian officials noticed a coincidence. The currencies of all the 5 original BRICS countries all start with the letter R. They then proposed that the new currency be called R5. The R5 or BRICS currency would start as a currency made by combining all the BRICS currencies, but first as an invisible currency as once the euro was, and then slowly but surely become physical and primarily used. In acceptance, skeptics often say that no currency will replace the dollar because not enough countries will adopt it, but the 5 BRICS countries alone represent a significant percent of the world's population. If you add all the members, it becomes around half of world population. In accessibility and utility, it will be at least used by half the world population and will push countries to use this currency who are trading with the BRICS countries and are wary of the US dollar and are looking for alternatives. If not, if the currency is pegged to a resource that can just exchange it for the resource, unlike other currencies. In stability, the currency, unlike the dollar, does not depend on one economy, rather multiple. And if it's pegged to a resource, then it will be more stable. In scarcity or controlled supply, it's possible. However, they would have to centralize the power so it does not favor any particular country. In trust, currency can be backed by commodity or any mineral. As I have told you how resource rich they are. China has a gold reserve of more than 2,200 tons, and Russia has a gold reserve of around the same, which is lower than the USA. However, China and Russia have quadrupled their reserve in the last 20 years, and they're buying like crazy. While officially China gold reserves are around 2,000, but some suggest it's more than 5,000. Nonetheless, they are stockpiling. Expansion is not a problem as more countries have joined and want to join. Other countries will also probably find the BRICS currency more appealing because it's not controlled by a single country and cannot be weaponized easily, unlike the dollar. The rest of the world will likely have to lessen their foreign reserve holding of the US dollar and increase their holding of this currency. However, BRICS economies have varying levels of economic stability. China has copied almost everything but can't seem to copy basic economic stability. India has spiced up growth, while South Africa can't even find the light switch. And Russia and Iran are the sanctioned duo. And Egypt has pyramids of debt and problems, while Saudi Arabia is printing money. So quite the inequality. India and China, two major players, have disputes and tensions, and there are other countries with disputes and problems as well. So mistrust within the organization. Anyway, this is Mr. Jim, an economist. He says that creating a common currency is an embarrassing idea. But if you consider it, and the more you know about the differences and disputes they will have, the more you will know how right he is. The BRICS countries also might look scary and powerful, but it's basically all China. China accounts for more output than all of the other countries in this group and combined twice over. So the BRICS is potentially a hostile economic force, but there's not much concerning than just China alone. While the group has existed officially for 14 years, it hasn't done anything effective. BRICS have of course announced plans to introduce an entirely new currency, but they've been talking about it since 2009. And so far, not much has happened. Even if they did manage to introduce a new currency, it would probably, most likely, only add problems and complications in their existing currencies. Fracturing this point, Indian foreign minister said,
"There is no idea of a BRICS currency, if I understood your point rightly. That currency, to my mind, will remain very much a national issue."
Nonetheless, we have to realize that the euro, which is a multinational currency, took 10 years of preparation. And even after it was launched in 1999, it was an invisible currency for 3 years. And these countries were close and had trust and harmony among them. While BRICS have a lot of problems and most likely they won't get a currency anytime soon. Nonetheless, the best they can do is introduce a BRICS-led payment system using national currencies. But still, it's concerning for the world, but not for the reasons you think. The reason is that groups like these form and the world becomes more isolated, only trading and sharing information and resources amongst their small blocks with similar interests. Because of this, we will all struggle. Global trade and global output are almost perfectly correlated, and the reason that countries like the ones in the BRICS group were able to develop their economy so quickly is because they had access to the global economy. Building an economy from the ground up from scratch is very difficult. It still is difficult now, but it's a lot easier when foreign investors can come in and give countries access to modern technology, money and infrastructure, and then be a customer for their outputs while they develop their domestic market. The trend of countries trying to become more self-sufficient will long-term slow down global economic growth. BRICS are not the only countries pushing this. The pandemic and trade tensions have made countries and companies consider bringing things closer to home for simplicity, but this may sacrifice efficiency and opportunities. Each of the big economies grew due to globalization, trade, investment, and sharing of resources. They grew and prospered due to globalization, which they themselves are destroying. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the animosity and mistrust between countries increased further. Like, for example, in the Russian invasion, the world was divided on Ukraine and Russia. Russia got support for some anti-Western countries, and on the other hand, Western countries provide Ukraine with more than $200 billion. The world was divided, and the division is increasing. But why did Ukraine got more than $200 billion of aid from the West? Here's why.